Donnie gripped his bowstaff tighter as he stared at Draxum. Logically, he knew it was impossible, but theoretically, he could feel the titanium alloy crack under his grip. His eyes skittered over the lab, the appealing glowing lights and the mix of organic and modern mad scientist design making him want to go home and work on redesigning his own. He rebuilt fast, Donnie murmured, trying and failing to hide how he was admiring the enemy's lair. Do you think that he used...
Not now, Dee!
Mikey hissed at him, and Donnie ducked his head, forcing himself to stop that line of thought. Right. Raph and Mikey could handle Draxum. Donnie just needed to work on his calculations. They'd been at this for 6 solid hours, and his wrist tech was already at a mere 40% battery life. Not that there was anything wrong with his tech. Normally it lasted much longer. He had just stayed up late last night with Leo playing video games and forgot to charge it. Or wait, wasn't it past midnight already? So what, the night before last? Focus, Donnie. The turtle shook his head slightly, glancing back at the yokai looming ahead of them. Raph shifted, red sparks flying off his weapons and anger rolling off of him in waves. Donnie, he muttered. What's the chance he's lying about Leo? Donnie glanced at the Baron. He looked almost bored at their presence, his posture relaxed and loose. But Donnie knew the relaxed appearance was all a lie, as his eyes were still sharp, following every move they made. I don't know. His voice came out flat, sounding almost as bored as Draxum's. Shoot, not the right sound for this emotion. He fidgeted, swallowed the lump in his throat. My calculations shouldn't be this off. The first 3 yokai alone had a 75% chance altogether of having him. Go past that and we're getting into single and soon after decimal percentages. I don't know why none of the cameras caught sight of him or... He paused, taking the chance to take a small breath. He was rambling now. He needed to stop. If I was this off, I need more data to rerun my simulations, he finished weakly. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Mikey look down at his feet, Kasara Fundo still held tightly to his chest. We should call April. See what she's found out. Raph took a deep breath, sucking in the air through the gap in his snaggletooth created. Okay, he agreed. Do we have time to search here first? Donnie blinked. Could they afford to waste time here if this was a cold lead? Who knew where Leo was or what was happening to him? But what if he was here and they missed him? There was good reason Draxum came up as a highly suspect yokai in his list. Between the strange, cold-blooded and yet admiring nature of his remarks of the brothers, Donnie had always had a bad feeling about this guy. But would he really seek out their lair and just take Leo? Donnie closed his eyes. He didn't know for sure. So, what was the higher priority? Time to double-check or time to look somewhere else? Why was Raph asking him this? He couldn't make these kinds of decisions with so little data. His younger brother, currently his only younger brother with him, Donnie thought distantly, spoke up, stepping away from them.
I'll be quick,
Mikey promised them over his shoulder, jaw set.
Watch Draxum for me.
And then he was dashing off and out of the main room before Raph or Donnie could say no.
No, Mikey!
Raph started to say, reaching fruitlessly after the youngest.
And he's gone.
Raph crossed his arms, careful not to activate his tonfas. Great, he muttered, turning a sharp gaze on Draxum, who had been silently watching them.
If he's not back in 2 minutes, sheepman, I'll...
No need for that, Draxum said, raising one hand. He shifted, glancing up and down Raph with a pointed, disdainful glance. I have no intention of doing anything of the sort. I've no need for it.
You already refused my offer for making you all actual warriors. The gargoyle on his shoulder laughed again, but stopped as soon as Draxum glanced at it. Donnie and Raph exchanged a look, but Raph looked as puzzled as Donnie felt over the Baron's behaviour. Well, good, Raph said, awkwardly. He didn't put his weapons down. Good. Well, if Draxum wasn't going to try and kill them this once, never say Donnie looked a gift horse in the mouth and ignored it. He glanced back at his wrist, pulling up the holographic screen. He needed to triple-check his numbers, run through possible alternate routes Leo had taken with the pizza. He had paid for it, so someone must have followed him back to the base. But no cameras had picked him up, so portals, obviously. But if he had portaled home, how had someone jumped him? Donnie suppressed a frustrated groan. He felt like he was chasing theoreticals. Where was the actual data hiding? What felt like an eternity, but was only approximately 3 minutes later, Mikey's quick footsteps signalled his appearance a second before the turtle skidded back into the room.
Quick sweep done, he gasped, chest heaving. Boy, he has some weird stuff in here, but I couldn't find Leo. Ready to go to the next place.
Raph nodded, turning to the other two.
Okay, let's go, mad dogs,
he ordered. He and Mikey jumped into action, clearing the place quickly and efficiently as Donnie activated his battle shell's flight mode. But as he was turning and his engine whirred into life, he saw something strange. Marks in the ground, like the puncture ones Draxum's weapons made. Were those still there from their last fight? But Draxum had remodeled everything else to an almost obnoxious degree, so why...
Donnie!
Raph called.
What? Yeah, coming. Sorry.
They travelled in silence, each with his own thoughts.
Donnie?
Mikey finally broke the silence, the smallest starting to lag as they ran over the rooftops. It was late, later than Mikey usually stayed up.
Is it... the thing with the data, is it that bad? It's not, right?
Donnie sighed. Mikey was clearly putting up an effort to be brave, but both he and Raph had known it wouldn't last as the hours had ticked by. They were all getting tired, and with no new information, they might have to turn in for the night. Donnie's phone started ringing, and he almost jerked himself right out of the air. He grabbed at the offending device, glancing at the caller for only a split second before answering. "Did you find something?" he demanded.
What? Did I? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Donnie. Is Raph there?
April answered, voice tight. She sounded out of breath. For a brief moment, thoughts of his brother, alone and hurt, receded as new probabilities of something else going wrong bloomed in his mind. Donnie blinked, aware his brothers had slowed to as close of a walk as they dared to, in order to watch his expression and listen in for any new snippets of information.
Yes?
He answered, puzzled. Raph had a cell phone of his own.
Did you need to speak to him specifically, or...?
Oh, then no. Where are you guys?
Near Alberto's, heading home to recheck my math.
Donnie glanced at his siblings, shaking his head. They both nodded, Raph rubbing one hand over his face and Mikey looking down.
We'll meet you there?
10 minutes later, they descended into the sewers, but Donnie felt nervous and unsettled even in their own home. The shadows felt much deeper and sharper all of a sudden, the normally non-threatening echoing nature of the tunnels feeling like the start of that one terrible Jupiter Jim Halloween special.
"Sheldon?"
he called, relaxing only slightly when the purple robot appeared.
Master Donatello, what can I do for you?
Sheldon asked. Donnie straightened up a bit,
making sure he looked confident, or at the very least unruffled by everything that was happening. Hide events mode. If any unauthorized people try and enter...
Vaporize them?
Yes. Donnie! Raph scolded. Donnie paused and glanced back. The snapping turtle met his eyes. We need them alive to find out where Leo is. Donnie smiled. A grim, cold thing. You heard the turtle? Restrain with only slight restraint. Sheldon let out a small beep of confirmation. Order received, and Donnie felt himself relax slightly, successfully reassured. He loved it when machines worked as they should. He'd have to expand the area of defense deeper into the sewers when this whole mess was over. From above came a loud clattering sound, and everyone stiffened. Only Sheldon remained unmoving. Donnie glanced back at his unresponsive robot before he forced himself to relax again. No cause for alarm. It's just April, he told his brothers, watching them also loosen up. The girl in question practically jumped down into the sewers, ignoring most of the ladder rungs. Mayhem was clutched tightly to her chest in one arm, and both looked around anxiously from turtle to turtle. Raph! She shouted, running towards the largest turtle. What? The turtle asked, flummoxed, before April drew back her foot and kicked him in the shin. From the sound April made, and the way Raph blinked down at her, Donnie could imagine that the result wasn't what either of them had expected would happen. April? Raph ventured. What? 4 times! I tried to call you 4 times! April said, jabbing a finger into Raph's chest, clutching her foot with one hand as she hopped in place. Do you know how I started to think? She glanced away, pulling Mayhem closer to her chest. How I started to think you guys were gone too? I had to call Donnie to get to you. It was scary. Don't tell me that Leo was gone missing and they just ghost me like that. Raph winced, but Donnie stiffened, thinking, it wasn't possible. Was it? Uh-oh. Raph muttered, pulling out his phone and wincing as his eyes scanned the first few notifications on the screen. April, I'm sorry, Raph said. Look, I'm putting it on ring right now, okay? It won't happen again. It better not, April sniffed, but she was sounding a bit more calm. Did you find anything about... Stop, wait, no, Donnie demanded. He didn't want to be right. But... Dee? Mikey asked. What's wrong? Yeah, Raph? Donnie asked, a feeling of dread pooling in his stomach. The red bubble with a number on it in your phone calls, he said. When did you last check your messages? My messages? Raph rubbed his eyes with 2 fingers. He started tapping the screen and scrolling through notifications with his thumb. I don't know, I've been a little bit too busy with this whole situation to catch up on... Oh. Raph stilled, his eyes staring at his phone. Donnie waited, but his brother didn't say anything else. Upon closer inspection, his eyes were reflecting a photo of green and blue. There's a voice message from him, Raph whispered. It was as if they were one, that all 4 dove for the phone, but the movement was too quick. It slipped out of Raph's fingers, through Mikey's and past Donnie's, only to land in April's hand as she snatched it inches from smashing against the ground. April hesitated for only a moment, Mayhem whining encouragingly from his view from her other arm. She glanced at Donnie, her eyes wide and scared, before she looked back down at the phone. Leo's photo replacing her eyes as the screen reflected off of her glasses. She took a deep breath, her thumb hitting the play button before she switched it to speaker and turned up the volume as loud as it could possibly go. Everyone leaned forwards, waiting.
Raph!
A voice, loud and panicked, crackled to life. Everyone jumped, but Raph in particular made a soft sound in the back of his throat, hands shaking as he pressed his hands into his thighs.
Quick! I need... And that's a recording.
Yep, that exasperated tone was Leo all right. Donnie winced, glancing back at Raph. He opened his mouth but shut it again, leaning as forwards as he could go without getting into April's personal space. But this was good. It was a lead. The sound of wind, of quick footsteps. Something cracked loudly, and Leo's breath rasped into the speakers.
Why didn't I call Donnie? He's the one who's always glued to his technology. Raph sometimes forgets to charge.
A louder crack, followed by several smaller ones.
Whoa! Hey, that is not okay!
Leo yelped, his footsteps stopping as more crashes happened. Donnie furrowed his brows. Those sounds weren't artillery-based noises, though. They lacked the echo of explosives. It sounded more like pure force. Someone large trying to land a blow but missing and hitting cement? Someone throwing large stones at his brother? What was it? More wind. A pause. And then the breeze picked up again, static-like through the phone.
And he sticks the landing!
Crack. Click. The four remained motionless, their heads almost pressed together as they lingered by the phone. "Play it again," Donnie ordered, his voice flat. He needed to listen to those sounds. That wind hadn't been in the sewers. He could run diagnostics, trace where this call had come from, maybe, but the call was already over, so that wouldn't be much harder. "Raph, I need to hear that again." Raph let out a soft whine. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, guys. I let you all down. I let Leo down. I should have had it on ring. I should have..." He buries his face in his hands, sinking down to his knees. "We were just watching a movie, so When my brother was out and he needed me and I wasn't there." April winced. "Raph, it's..." She glanced at Donnie, but Donnie didn't know what to say either. It's okay. It wasn't. Not in the Raph's opinion. Not until they had Leo back. And in Donnie's? Well, he didn't want to blame his brother about this. He could leave any deeper thinking about this subject to ponder after Leo was home. "It was a simple mistake. You couldn't have known." "Well, it's a good lead," Donnie offered, unable to keep watching Raph beat himself up over a simple mistake. Raph sniffed, looking up at him. He had the kind of look that one carried around when he was told by Splinter a cat was out of the question, but much worse. Donnie pressed on, bending slightly down so they were eye to eye. "I can work with this, Raph. You probably couldn't have helped in the 14 seconds that the phone was working anyways, and this way it was recorded so I can analyze what happened. So it'll be okay. Probably," he added, probably ruining the effect of everything he had led the pep talk with. "Donnie, not now," April hissed at him, glaring over the top of Raph's head. Raph rubbed at his eyes with his palms and forced himself to his feet. No, that actually did help. Thanks, Dee."
But what kind of thing can that message tell you anyways, Donnie?"
Mikey piped up, the youngest picking at the sticker near his hip.
"I didn't hear anyone else's voice, and Leo didn't give us any details, so isn't it useless?"
"Ah, Michael, but what is helpful here is context," Donnie said, puffing out his chest. Finally something fun to work on. Something to do that could get him results. It's not what Leon said that was important, but rather the sounds present that can help me narrow it into where this call came from. For instance, I think the wind at the location gave something big away because
Because it wasn't in our sewer.
Mikey realized as well. His eyes went wide.
So,
Raph repeated before he turned and looked at his brothers, brow furrowed.
where was Leo?
Well, he avoided all the cameras, didn't portal, had lots of wind. Donnie counted off on his fingers. April gasped.
I didn't check the way to the pizzeria by the roofs.
They were all sleepy and exhausted, but Donnie knew that none of them would rest until they had absolutely nothing left to go on. With a shared nod, they all set off again, back into the dark night. Leo stumbled through the portal, his arms frantically pinwheeling as he awkwardly hopped until he regained his balance, facing back towards the portal. Draxum emerged shortly after him, Moonin sitting on his shoulder while Hugin hovered near Leo's head. They were in a dimly lit room, paintings covering the walls and the shelves holding expensive-looking pottery. Leo glanced down at his feet into a familiar red carpet, the strong air conditioning of the building making him shiver slightly.
Well,
a voice said, sounding amused.
This is a surprise.
Leo froze, trying to swallow past the collar. You've got to be kidding me, he thought, cold sweat breaking out all over his body despite the chill in the air. Her? Really? I thought Draxum hated her. But he had run around here before. He knew the layout of the building. If he had a moment away from Draxum, then... Draxum brushed past Leo, the turtle wincing as his shoulder was knocked. Big Mama, Draxum greeted, voice cool. It's been a while. Leo glanced over his shoulder as Big Mama spun around in her chair, seemingly trying to be as creepy as she could possibly make herself seem. She was in her human form, her eyes surveying Draxum with a critical glint in them.
Indeed it is, Draxum. But didn't you hear?
Her voice went hard and cold, and Hugin wearily flitted to hide behind Draxum.
It's rude to just portal into someone's personal office. Why don't you ever use the dimbly door?
Draxum sighed, rolling his eyes. The sheep yokai was exceedingly good at looking unbothered by everything going on around him sometimes. I'm not here to waste time with petty squabbles. I have a deal for you.
Oh? Do tell.
The spider lady stood up, circling around to the front of her desk, and one hand gracefully lifting to hit the button on her lapel, her other form springing into life as she kept advancing to tower over Draxum. I want you to look after this turtle for me for a while, Draxum said, one hand gesturing towards Leo. He swallowed as Big Mama's head followed the motion, the villainess's 6 red eyes narrowing. Oh, fantastic! Leo hated everything about this. It was like someone was trying to create one big nightmare scenario for Leo. He lowered his head into his shell slightly, wishing that he could go all the way in the same way that Mikey was able to. He felt like a bug under a microscope, or perhaps, a more fitting metaphor, a bug trapped in a spider's web.
One of the turtles?
Big Mama questioned, distaste heavy in her voice.
Not to mention it's the blue one.
Well, she definitely remembered him. Leo would have been proud if he wasn't in this specific predicament at the moment.
What are you playing at, Draxum?
You have that ridiculous battle nexus, do you not? Draxum said. He leaned against her desk, casually examining his fingernails. I want to enter a fighter into the ring. This fighter, actually. Big Mama snorted, shaking her head. You really think Big Mama is so desperate for fighters that I'm willing to take anyone? Those turtles are only worth anything to me as bumbling arena clowns. She shifted, turning her head back to Draxum, and altogether dismissing Leo as any kind of threat. Leo turned to try and gather his energy, but his side twinged in protest as he shifted. He gritted his teeth, one hand pressing his shell where Draxum had kicked him earlier. Besides, I'm not doing any favours for you, not after what you did. I never asked for a favour, Draxum snapped. I said I had a deal. The warrior scientist reached back, grabbing Leo by the back of his shell and dragging him forwards. Heedless of how Leo's heels dug into the carpet, and the red-eared slider squirmed and grabbed Draxum's ironclad grip. I engineered this turtle with Lujitsu's very own DNA. You could even say he's merely a weapon waiting for its potential to make itself known. Draxum finally pushed himself upright, taking 2 measured steps forward so he could get right up in Big Mama's face, voice cold. So, if you're still mad at me for that little incident, I can do you one better. I'm practically gifting you a new battle champion. This way, there can actually be a use for that ridiculous side hustle you call entertainment. Big Mama stiffened, her mouth opening slightly before she closed it. She reached for Leo, who weakly kicked at her, unable to stop himself from being picked up in one of her giant claws. Draxum let her take him. This is what you did with Lujitsu? Her voice cracked and her eyes narrowed. Leo also paused, confused. What did Lujitsu have to do with a yokai? He was a movie star. He shouldn't have known Big Mama, or Draxum, now that he thought about it. What kind of bibbly-bumbly science are you even doing? You stole my champion to make this... Your champion had already started to refuse to cooperate with you, hadn't he? Draxum shot back. If anything, I did you a favour. Here's a better version who will actually stay quiet and put up a fight. That doesn't sound like the blue turtle I'm familiar with, Big Mama shot back, but her voice was quieter, contemplative. One of her fingers brushed against the collar, pressing the warm metal slightly into Leo's skin, and he felt his breath hitch. What exactly did you do to him? Draxum started to drone something out, probably puffing himself up about his evil plan or whatever. But Leo had to think fast, trying to furiously ignore the itching sensation around his neck. He took a deep breath. If he said something now, if he spoke, it wouldn't just shock him. Big Mama might be startled enough to drop him, and then what, wise guy? You couldn't even take on Draxum alone, he argued against himself. Besides, I don't even know if I could stand one more shock. His collar beeped, and an involuntary shudder raced down his body. Wait, he hadn't heard the command. What had Draxum said? It was uncomfortable how quickly that little noise was now able to make Leo feel like his breath had been knocked out of him, how he was suddenly dropped into a ship and a storm was at sea. Big Mama tilted Leo so that she could get a closer look at the collar. I see, she finally said. You wouldn't happen to be selling these splendiferous contraptions, would you, Draxie? No, and don't try and remove that one either. It won't come off, Draxum warned. A pity, she hummed, tilting her head as she thought. It would help get a lot of my fighters into the spirit of things, as it were. If I had this 15 years ago, for instance. Yes, Draxum said impatiently. Now, are you taking him, or should I find someone else? Well, he obviously has a concussion, Big Mama said. Look at his eyes, all rolling about. I can't get any kind of performance out of someone all whizzy-knackered like this, you know? She tapped two of her smaller hands together, considering. But I could always store him until he's in fighting condition. Won't the other turtles be looking for him right now, boss? Hugin finally piped up, Draxum glancing at him from the corner of his eye. Leo wasn't sure if the gargoyle was helping or hurting his cause at this point, so he made do with glaring at Draxum's general direction. Maybe letting him stay out of such a public space for a week would be in our best interests. Fine, Draxum allowed, nodding after a moment of debate. But after that, I want him in at least 3 matches a day. Hugin will oversee everything to make sure it's up to my expectations, and I will come by now and then for some additional training. Big Mama blinked, and Leo was lowered enough so that his toes could brush the floor. My best fighters only fight 2 matches a day, 3 times a week, she warned Draxum. And normally, they just do 1, and with the possibility of injuries. I don't care, Draxum snapped. Just do it. Draxum, Big Mama said, her voice unusually serious. He'll break. Draxum paused right before he entered the portal, Hugin purposefully hanging back from his boss for once. Draxum didn't look back. He only kept his head high and looked forwards. Then let him break, he ordered coldly. If that's all he's worth, then I have 3 spares to try again. And if that happens, then the collar is yours to keep. And then he was gone, leaving Leo all alone with his new gargoyle babysitter and the giant spider lady that still gave him the creeps. All in all, Leo was pretty sure that the situation couldn't possibly get any worse. But perhaps that was just him being optimistic.